5 things I wished I knew when embarking on this journey of finding my own way, which would have made this whole process so much easier, so much less frustrating, and, overall just more enjoyable. Hello and welcome back to today's video. If you haven't watched the introduction video, please do. I'm going to put it up above and down below so you can have a look at it, just to give you a better idea what this channel is about. So here are the 5 things that I wished I knew when embarking on this journey of figuring out my own life, plus a bonus one that I'm gonna mention at the end. Number 1, there is no right or wrong way of doing it, there is just your way. I used to have a very rigid mindset. I was so rigid and I was so fixed on how things had to be that I basically stood in my own way. So when you feel really frustrated and you feel like nothing is working, one of the key things that I have learned is keeping an open mindset. And it sounds so simple, but it's such like a crucial aspect. And it's for actually a very simple reason, because basically you're trying to find a way that kind of doesn't exist yet. And it doesn't exist for 2 reasons. Number 1, if you had already found that way, you wouldn't be struggling, you would already be on that way, you would feel aligned and happy and joyful with your life. And the second reason is that you are uniquely, like every person is unique. There are similarities and there are things that overlap, but in the end, every person is absolutely unique and their own way is gonna be different from anyone else. Even if it's a lot similar or it can look very similar, at the end of the day, the nuances are going to be different. So no one has walked that path before because you never existed before. Depending on what kind of person you are like, this might feel like very liberating or it can feel very frustrating. I was the frustrated person because I just wanted a manual on how my life worked and I just wanted to work by that manual. And that part actually was a lot about surrendering and accepting what is. And also taking responsibility in being the guide of my own life, of my own way. Because what I try to do is like just take the outside, the universe, another person, a mentor, whoever, just not myself, to give me the answers. But I just found that I am the only one who has the answers. Which actually leads me to point number 2. The answers are always inside of you, never outside of you. And this was also a huge one because I was constantly in the belief that someone outside or something outside of me would have the answers that I was seeking for. So I would attend all the seminars and all the courses and kind of almost desperately seek that answer and be like, there's this pain and I just really want this for my life, but I don't know what this is. And they would give me their best advice, but there lies the problem with number 1 is it was their advice, it was what worked for them, but not what was working for me. So it wasn't adapted to my situation, even though the principle applied, but the way they applied it was customized to them and not to me. So the thing that I really learned in that aspect was, okay, every information that I get from the outside, every word, every advice, every conversation, every test results from, I don't know how many personality tests that I did, they were only meant as a trigger, as a guide, but not as the answer. So when I did a test on what to do with my life career-wise, it wasn't that the results of that test was the answer. It actually was that the results of the test were the guide of showing me, this is the area that you need to move towards with and just start exploring from there. The other thing that I've learned is that everything outside basically is a trigger, and it's about noticing that initial reaction to that trigger. It can be an advice, it can be a test results, it can be a seminar that you attend. When you're seeking answers and you're having an interaction with the outside in whatever form, you will have an initial response to it, and it's about observing that initial response and then question it. Now, why do you need to question your initial response? There's 2 reasons for that, because the initial response can either be your intuition and being like, okay, this is the direction, or the initial reaction can actually be an old wound coming up that you haven't worked through yet, a limiting belief, a trauma, whatever it is that is actually holding you back. So it can actually be that the initial response is showing you what to work on next. So when I say questioning it, it's not about doubting it, it's about more like inquiring it, really understanding what that initial response is about. Basically one of the best guides that you can have, because it's a customized to yourself. You are the only one who has this specific reaction to this specific input that you are getting. And this leads me to point number 3, which is exploring. Oh my God, would I have saved myself a lot of time if I just went for it instead of trying to figure it out in my head. So what I was trying to do, I was trying to do a test and be like, okay, what do I want to do career-wise? And then those results would come up and I just felt frustrated with them. Or I would just, be like, okay, this sounds really good, I'm just gonna go with that. And along the way, I would get frustrated because I didn't like it. So one of the tripping points that I had was like thinking that I need to have the answer right away. Instead of, again, like point number 1, having an open mind and just exploring. I would have saved myself so much frustration if I was like, I'm just gonna dive into astrology and explore that until I get bored of it. And maybe I get bored of it and maybe not, and I will just continue with it and it ends up being that thing. But I had that limiting belief of, if I started one thing, it had to be that thing. When I started to really apply that, things started to fall into place so quickly. So I could have easily saved myself a decade in this process. Which leads me to point number 4, and that is understanding yourself and understanding who you are. So when I left school, all I knew is that I didn't know what I wanted from life and what to do with life. But what I didn't understand is that I also didn't know who I was, what I liked, what I disliked. So for some people this happens during the teenage years, and for others it doesn't. And it doesn't matter, it doesn't make you better or worse. But understanding yourself at your core is like crucial in finding your own way. So this is where I find that exercises like the Ikigai are really helpful. However, those exercises only operate on the mental or on the mind level. And this is where the previous point of exploring is so important. It is really great to go through such exercise and figuring it out and getting an idea of who you are and what you like and dislike. Taking those principles that I can, pick from my brain and then try them out into the exploring part and be like, okay, I'm gonna explore coaching, and then I notice, okay, I kind of like coaching, I like the self-development part of coaching, but I don't like the daily activity of being a coach. So I just pick out the things that work for me and keep going from there. And this is actually where you start from your mind and get into the physical world and try to explore, and then you like reflect on your initial responses on like, okay, why did this work? Why did it not work? Why did that make me feel good and why not? And doing that over and over again, you're taking yourself as a guide. And even though you have kind of a rough map on what your journey looks like, at least what the next step is going to look like, there's another component that plays into it, which is point number 5, and this is trust and faith. And this is a huge one, because if you are chartering into new territory where everything is unknown and new, and you don't know what to expect, and you don't even know if you get to the ultimate destination that you are hoping for, faith and trust that it's going to work out, it's like crucial. If I take myself as example again, like all I knew is that I wanted a life that I enjoyed and loved, that I would be excited about to wake up in the morning. But I had no clue what that looked like, nor how to get there. The only thing that I really had that kept me going was the faith, the trust that it existed. I just knew that it existed. I saw so many people who had a fulfilled life, so I knew it was possible. And if it was possible, I knew it was possible for me as well. And this is honestly the only thing that I've been hanging on for the last 15 years, where I was like, I just know it's gotta exist. I gotta make it work. I'm gonna make it work. And this is what really gets you through the tough times, even the downside, even every time that I spiraled into the bottom before picking myself up again. It was like giving up was not an option. And it wasn't an option because I have the faith Even if I didn't have that much trust in myself, to be honest, but I had the faith that it was possible. And that is literally what kept me going. Now, when it comes to faith and trust, there's two things to consider. One is the emotion, and the other is the skill to tap into the emotion. Now, we're not going to make a full deep dive into that, but developing a certain emotion, like the easiest way that I found to do it is through meditation or visualization. So if faith and trust is something that is challenging or doesn't come easily to you, training that specific emotion would be something that I would suggest you do, because it's really what gets you through the dark nights and the tough times and when everything seems lost, quite literally. Then the second part about is the skill of tapping into that emotion of trust and faith as well, because it's great if you can feel that faith when everything is going great, but you actually need this when the night is the darkest. This is when you need the ability to be like, you know what, everything feels so horrible, it's shit, I don't see a way out, but I know it's gonna work out. It's okay that it doesn't feel good, but I know it's going to work out. Like that sense of faith, you need that when you're feeling like you're absolutely worst. Before we go into the bonus part that I promised you that would have made my life so much easier and less painful, I want to remind you to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Also, I know it's been a lot. I've just dumped like quite a lot on you right now. So feel free to re-listen to the parts that call to you at a later time. It's okay if you weren't able to absorb it all in one go. So let's look at the bonus tip that I have, and stay with me for this one because it is so simple, but it's so impactful. Being kind and compassionate towards yourself. Now this might sound like a no-brainer, but I want to ask yourself, have you been kind and compassionate towards yourself in your journey of finding your own way? Because I can guarantee you, I was not kind and compassionate with myself. I was really harsh, I was really mean, I was really strict, and I was very unforgiving with myself. But if I would have applied the 5 previous steps that I had shared with you, plus being kind and compassionate and loving towards myself and be like, it's okay, Jada, it's okay that it didn't work out this time, it's okay that this wasn't the one thing, it's okay that you still haven't figured it out, it's okay that it feels like everyone is ahead and you feel behind, it's okay. Just this simple phrase of it's okay, there's nothing wrong with me, I'm still on track, I'm gonna figure it out eventually. So this simple phrase of it's okay, it's like the emotional hug that you're giving yourself for not figuring it out, for not hitting the goal that you wanted to go. It's like really take care of yourself. Really think about this the next time you feel like you have failed again, how you have been treating yourself when things didn't go your way. Just give yourself that emotional hug of like, it's okay. This brings us to the end of the video. I hope you find it helpful. If you did, you know what to do. Otherwise, I see you in the next one.